It was always twilight on the jungle moon of Orlen 5. The planet's binary suns never fully set, only casting long, slanting shadows through a canopy of violet and charcoal green foliage. Beneath the cover of thick, bioluminescent leaves, the jungle pulsed with quiet life, spores blooming in silence, insects blinking like lost stars, and tendrils coiling around roots like memories that refuse to die. Neera didn't speak. Not just now, she rarely ever did. She was Velatin. A scout from the Whisper Orders. They were trained in silence, lived in silence, and died without a sound. Speech was inefficient. It wasted breath, betrayed presence, and, worst of all, made one feel. Her instructors had warned her of that. Feeling was a kind of blindness. Attachment dulled precision. Love. Love was the slow death. They'd etched those mantras into her bones. But Orlen 5 was not a place for absolutes. She had been tracking heat trails from old battlefield scans, leftover thermal signatures the command post insisted were, probably malfunctioning equipment. She knew better. She always knew better. The trail began near a crater where the rainwater had pooled deep enough to drown small creatures. The patterns were strange, too rhythmic for wildlife, too erratic for machines. She followed the signature through moss-laden gullies, over shattered bones of machines long silent, and beneath twisted roots that grew like fossilized screams. Then she saw him. The man. Alone. Barefoot. Moving through the underbrush like he belonged to it. His clothes were little more than threads, soaked in sweat and dirt. Skin scraped raw at the knees and elbows. Hair tangled in knots that reached his shoulders. He looked more like an abandoned myth than a survivor. But it wasn't his condition that made her still. It was his eyes. They were closed. Not just blinking. Not resting. Closed, as if he didn't need them. As if he had forgotten what sight even was. Neera crouched low, heart slowed to the hum of the jungle. You see him too? Temel's voice slid into her ear through the comm implant, no louder than the shift of wind. He was her mission partner, standard Velatin pairing. He covered her blind side. She covered his doubts. Neera tapped 2 fingers on her leg. Wait. Human. She blinked once. Affirmative. Armed? She flicked a stone. Negative. What's he doing? That she didn't know. The man stepped carefully through the tangle of thorn roots. Without vision, without stumbling. Without fear. No Velatin dared move like that. Even they used sight. Even they obeyed the jungle's chaos. The man walked as though he listened to something deeper. Something just below the surface of sound. Orders? Temel asked. Neera hesitated. Then she stood. She made herself visible. The man turned toward her instantly, even though his eyes stayed shut. He didn't reach for a weapon. Didn't raise his arms. Didn't cower or challenge. He simply nodded. As if he'd been waiting. You came alone, he said. Smart. His voice was rough, dry, underused. But there was a calmness in it, like old trees that didn't care who climbed them. What are you doing here? Neera asked. Her voice surprised even her, it felt like drawing a knife that had been hidden too long. Living, he said, stepping closer. The war ended, but the jungle didn't. Neera frowned. You shouldn't be alive. Neither should you. They stared at each other, her eyes sharp and scanning, his still closed. You're blind, she said. You're deaf, he replied gently. Neera stiffened. I hear everything, she snapped. He smiled. No, you only hear what you expect. You're trained that way. Trained to block out everything else. Who trained you? The jungle, he said. And pain. She should have detained him. The protocol was clear. Unauthorized humans found in contested sectors must be captured or executed, depending on resistance. But this man, this blind, starving, barefoot man, wasn't resisting. He was revealing. And she wasn't ready for what he revealed. So she tested him. "I want to see something," she said. "Stand still." He raised a brow. "You'll shoot me." "No, just observe." He sighed, then stepped into the center of the clearing. Hands relaxed at his sides. Neera motioned to Temel, who appeared behind a branch, raising a short-burst arrow, non-lethal, but fast. 12 shots, she whispered. The man smiled. "You'll miss." Neera nodded. Temel fired. Arrow after arrow launched in rapid succession. Some aimed high, some low. One curved in mid-flight due to the magnetic field interference from the canopy above. The man didn't flinch. He moved, just enough. A lean to the left. A pivot. A breath. Each motion minimal, elegant, like falling water rerouting around stones. Every shot missed. The final arrow passed through where his shoulder had been a second before. Temel cursed. Neera stared. "How?" she asked. The man opened his eyes, but not really. They didn't focus. Didn't blink. They were clouded gray. "You see lines," he said. "I see patterns. Feel pressure shifts. Temperature. Sound waves off your breath." He pointed behind her. "And your heartbeat just changed. You're curious now." Neera didn't answer. Curiosity was dangerous. It meant letting something in. And something was getting in. She returned the next day. And the next. And again. Each time, the jungle felt less like enemy terrain and more like a second language she was finally learning to speak. The man told her his name was Ivan. No last name. No rank. Just Ivan. "You were a soldier?" she asked once. "Once," he said. "But then I started to see too much. They don't like that." She watched him press his fingers into the bark of a tree. "Everything vibrates," he explained. "Even lies. Even silence." Neera sat beside him, unsure why she didn't report him. By the 5th visit, they were sharing rations. By the 7th, they were sharing stories. Or, more accurately, he was telling them, and she was, listening. Not scanning. Not judging. Not waiting to reply. Just listening. "You know," Ivan said one night as they lay on a wide tree branch that arched over a slow river, "when you're blind long enough, you start to see people as shapes of intention." Neera turned her head toward him. "What shape am I?" "A flame," he said, without hesitation. "Flickering. Reaching. Dangerous. Beautiful." Her breath caught. "That's a line," she said, "from a book." "Maybe," he said, smiling faintly. "Or maybe the book copied you." It happened during the rain. Sheets of water poured from the canopy, soaking them both. They took shelter beneath a low rock shelf where the air tasted of moss and wet stone. "I should go," she said. "Then go," he said. But she didn't. Instead, she turned to him. Her fingers grazed his wrist, testing, asking. He responded without hesitation. He leaned in. Their lips met. It was awkward. Cold rain, warm breath. But it meant something. It was proof that silence could scream. Proof that feeling wasn't weakness. That her instructors had been wrong. When she returned to her outpost, Neera stood in front of the holoscreen, watching her face in the low flickering light. She had changed. She could feel it, not just in the way she moved, but in what she noticed now. Sounds she had once filtered out. Smells. Micro-expressions in others. She had learned something from him. She uploaded a false report. No human signatures. No anomalies. No threats. It was the first lie she'd ever told command. And she didn't feel guilty. On her final night as a scout, she sat beside Ivan on the river's edge. His hand found hers, fingers interlaced. "You'll have to run," he said. "I know. They'll come for you. Let them." He smiled. "Why me?" "Because you see without seeing," she said. "And for the first time, so do I." He turned his head, and though his eyes never opened, she felt him watching her in a way no one ever had. "You're not afraid anymore," he said. "No," she replied. "I'm alive." When she walked away from her uniform, she didn't leave a message. Just a pendant, a small, flat stone she'd carried since her first scout kill. She placed it beneath a leaf, by the stream, in the shape of an ear. So they would know she'd started listening again. Not to orders. Not to war. But to the sound of stillness. The derelict drifted in the void like a god's forgotten coffin. It spun slowly in orbit above the moon Veldon 3, a vast hollow vessel shaped like a curled ribcage. No signals, no propulsion. Just a long dead shape wrapped in time. Fail stood at the edge of the research outpost's main viewport, watching it. His breath fogged the glass slightly. Others would say the ship looked eerie or cursed. He didn't think so. He just thought it was lonely. Fail couldn't speak, not because he chose silence, but because his voice had been taken from him before he ever learned to use it. His larynx had been damaged during birth. For as long as he could remember, he'd lived in a world where words only happened on screens or inside his skull. But Fail had a gift. He understood language, not just human, not just spoken, but vibration, rhythm, tension, resonance. His world wasn't silent. It was symphonic. The linguistics division had assigned him to Veldon 3 to analyze strange pulses emanating from the derelict. There had been no breach. No external tampering. The structure was still intact. Yet it emitted patterns, once every few hours, low-frequency bursts that made the bones in his hands tingle. His colleagues logged them as static. Fail disagreed. The pulses weren't random. They had pattern. Emotion. Grief. He didn't know how he knew that. He just did. The outpost was cold, practical, colorless. Its corridors were thin, its oxygen thin, its people thinner. Fail didn't mind. He wasn't here for comfort. He was here for the hum. Every day, he isolated one of the new transmissions. Listened to it, felt it, through a skin-conducted translation pad. He watched waveforms. Notated patterns. Traced what he called emotional compression, tiny modulations in the signal that mirrored human affective states. He didn't share this with his team. They wouldn't understand. They were still looking for data. Fail was looking for voice. On the 8th day, everything changed. He boarded the derelict. They called it the Asa. From orbit, it looked like a fossil. Up close, it was cathedral-like, tall and narrow, built from smooth, bone-colored alloys unknown to human metallurgy. Fail stepped into its inner corridor, EVA suit whispering with each movement. Immediately, he felt pressure, like a heartbeat in the walls. He reached for the transmitter box and tapped out 3 slow pulses. Tap. Pause. Tap tap. Nothing. Then, reply. Tap. Tap tap tap. Tap. His chest tightened. Not an echo. Not a malfunction. A response. He moved deeper into the vessel, leaving the light of the human shuttle behind. The air inside was breathable, though stale. The walls seemed to pulse gently, their color shifting between ivory and gray with each of his steps. Then he found her. Or rather, she found him. "You're not one of them," the voice echoed around him, not in his ears, but in the pads of his fingers, through the metal of his suit. He turned, hands trembling. A figure stepped forward. Tall. Luminous skin like opal glass. Not clothed, exactly, but wrapped in layers of metallic film that shimmered as she moved. Her eyes, if they were eyes, were slits of pale green light. He couldn't speak. He didn't even try. She stepped closer. Your bones speak, she said. You hear through them. You feel without words. He raised his hands and signed slowly. Who are you? She tilted her head. I am called Leal. Leal didn't speak in sounds. Not really. Her voice traveled through contact, resonating against metal, against skin, against the silence between them. She touched the wall. It vibrated faintly. He placed his hand against it, and for the first time, he understood her. Not her language. Her. Her sorrow. Her history. Her solitude. The Asa was not a warship. It was a memory ship, a vessel carrying the collective experiences of a species long extinct. Only one remained. Her. And she had been waiting for someone who could hear without needing to listen. Someone like Fail. They met every day after that. He'd leave the outpost under the guise of acoustic mapping missions. No one followed him. Fail wasn't good at friendships. He didn't crave them. But with Leal, something cracked inside him. She showed him how to use resonance pads embedded in the Asa's walls, translators of emotional frequency. He taught her human signs and facial expressions. They invented their own hybrid gestures. She told him her people didn't use words until they had to. Language was a last resort, she said once. Before that, we shared feeling. He wrote that down. Not in the report. In his private journal. Beneath the line, he wrote, I think I love her. One night, if night could be measured in a sunless orbit, Fail rested his forehead against hers. The contact was gentle. Her skin was cool. They didn't need to say anything. Her pulse moved through his bones. He felt it like music. A rhythm older than speech. He stopped sending data back to headquarters. The transmissions from the Asa became classified, or so he claimed. His team didn't protest. No one wanted to go near the ghost ship anyway. But Fail didn't see a ghost. He saw a woman with memories etched into her flesh and sorrow woven into every vibration of her breath. And he wanted to give her something in return. Stay, she said one evening, when his hand lingered longer than usual on hers. He paused. Then signed, I want to. Her light dimmed. Not in sadness. In humility. You don't have to fill silence with anything, she said. Just be. He nodded. And stayed. A week passed. The outpost pinged his tracker, but he disabled it. His comms, too. He stopped being Fail the linguist. He became Fail, the one who listened. They built a chamber together at the core of the Asa. Not with tools, but with vibration. With tone. The Asa responded to emotional intention. If you harmonized the right frequency, the walls would reshape themselves. She called it the dreaming room. He called it home. There was no kiss. No sex. No traditional gestures of affection. Instead, he lay beside her, bare skin against hers, and they vibrated together in a slow, mutual rhythm. He could feel her remembering everything. Her people. Their loss. The aching gap of centuries. And she felt his silence. Not as absence. But as sanctuary. The Asa dimmed slowly over the weeks, its pulses now syncing with the two of them. They were one signal. Not a couple. Not lovers. Something older. More essential. He stopped writing. Stopped recording. He no longer needed words. He only needed her. But the outpost noticed. When his EVA suit remained unreturned. When his report logs stopped syncing. When static began interrupting nearby transmissions. They sent a drone. It never returned. On the final day, she turned to him and said, "They will come." He nodded. "We'll hide. They will burn. Then we'll flee." She paused. Her light flickered. "There's another way." He felt it through the wall. A frequency rising. A hum building. Something ancient and final. "I can become memory," she said. "And you with me. Not dead. Not gone. Just, echoed." He didn't hesitate. He placed his hand on hers. Yes. They lay together in the dreaming room as the ASA began to vibrate, deeper, lower, fuller. Light flooded the corridors. Memory expanded. Consciousness unbound. They became waveform. Emotion. Sound. Language beyond symbols. Love beyond flesh. When the boarding crew arrived days later, they found nothing. No fail. No alien. No vibration. Just silence. A perfect silence. And on one wall, etched in the strange half-metal like the trail of wind through sand, was a single phrase in an unknown pattern of curves and dots. No one could translate it. But Fail would have told them what it meant. "I listened, and she heard me." The asteroid mining platform rotated slowly, like a tired wheel rolling through the emptiness of deep space. Senya hated it here. Not because it was dangerous, though it was. Not because the oxygen was recycled through filters that smelled faintly of rust, though it did. Not even because she hadn't felt real sunlight in 183 days. She hated it because gravity was wrong here. She could feel it, deep in her joints, the subtle inconsistencies. The pressure in her legs wasn't steady. Some corridors felt heavier. Others too light. And no one else noticed. "Relax," they said. "You're imagining it." But Senya was a gravity systems engineer. She didn't imagine physics. She built it. And gravity, her first language, was speaking in riddles. The platform was called P9 Aster. A minor mining colony on the edge of the Ultra Belt. No one wanted to be stationed here unless they were escaping something. Senya wasn't escaping. She was searching. 6 months ago, during a system audit, she had detected fluctuations, minor distortions in gravitational output. Too subtle to be mechanical error. Too organic to be random. It was like something inside the asteroid was moving the field. Central Command didn't care. "It's an old rock," they said. "Just keep the drills running." But Senya couldn't ignore it. Not when it felt like gravity was trying to get her attention. The deeper the drills went, the stranger things became. Machines slowed. Metal fatigued faster. Even light bent in odd ways, shadows pooling where none should form. Senya descended alone on a Tuesday shift, standard equipment check. What she found changed everything. It wasn't a creature. Not a relic. It was a man. Lying against the mineral wall like he'd been part of it all along. No suit. No mask. Skin marked with faint glowing patterns that pulsed in sync with the gravity readings on her wrist display. She didn't scream. She didn't even move. He opened his eyes, slowly, like waking from centuries of sleep. "You found me," he said. His voice didn't echo. It pressed against her. Like weight. His name was Davi. No last name. No origin. Just Davi. He told her he had been here long before the drills. That he had not always had a body. That he used to be part of the asteroid, its mass, its curve, its memory. Senya didn't believe him. Not at first. But when he touched the wall, and the gravity shifted like a sigh, she started to wonder. Over the next few weeks, they met in secret. She told no one. Davy never asked why. He showed her how gravity wasn't just a force, but a conversation. How intention could pull, how thought could shape orbit. They would lie on the underside of an abandoned tunnel shaft, upside down to the rest of the world, held by a field he generated with a gesture. Gravity, he whispered once, brushing her cheek with the back of his fingers, is how bodies confess their desire to stay. She didn't reply. She was too busy falling. Senya had never loved anyone. Not really. She'd had lovers. Nights that smelled of oil and half-drunk synth wine. But nothing that made her bones ache when it ended. With Davy, there was no beginning. Only closeness. They never kissed in the usual sense. Instead, they touched foreheads, letting their pulses align. He would shift the field slightly, letting her body rise into his, until they hovered, suspended by pressure and longing. She told herself it was physics. But it wasn't. It was him. She started spending more time underground. She told the crew it was sensor calibration. Truth was, she didn't care about the sensors anymore. She only cared about the pull she felt toward the gravity anomaly that had a name and a heartbeat. Davy taught her to feel weight differently. Most people think gravity is what holds them down, he said. But it's also what keeps the stars in love with each other. He showed her how to fold a rock in midair with nothing but breath. He showed her how to walk sideways on the wall of a tunnel by trusting the shift. He showed her how to listen to mass, how even in silence, things wanted to be close. One night, as they floated in the low-pressure dome he'd shaped from magnetic field lines, she said something she didn't mean to say aloud. "Don't leave me." He didn't respond for a long time. Then. "I'm not meant to stay." She turned to him, chest tightening. "What do you mean?" He didn't look at her. "Gravity changes," he said. "When enough time passes, it lets go." The next morning, the platform shook. Not from drills. Not from collapse. From him. Davy was changing. His skin cracked light. His breath moved the walls. He was becoming unstable, too much energy, too much force compressed into human shape. Senya ran diagnostics on the tunnel and watched as the gravity level spiked and flattened like a heartbeat before arrest. He was becoming massless. He was leaving. "Stay," she said, when they met again. He looked older. Brighter. Less solid. "I can't," he said. "I was never supposed to take shape this long. You made me want to." Her throat clenched. "Then don't go." He touched her jaw, softly. "You feel gravity like I do. You'll understand, one day. Everything that pulls also releases." "I don't want release." He smiled. "But you deserve it." His final act wasn't a goodbye. It was a gift. He reached for her, palms open. "Let me show you," he said. She placed her hands in his. And the world shifted. Not outward. Inward. For one brief moment, she felt everything, mass, distance, desire, love, all compressed into the curve of his smile and the way his body held hers without touch. Then. Release. He disappeared in a slow wave of shimmering pressure. Like a breath no longer held. She returned to the surface alone. The crew had detected nothing. But the gravity was different now. Balanced. Settled. Kind. She never told anyone about him. But she never left, either. She stayed on P9, Aster. She walked its halls. Tuned its systems. Whispered to its core. Sometimes, she felt a slight pull in the air. A shift in weight against her spine. And she would smile, knowing. He was still there. One night, she stood in the shaft where they used to float. Eyes closed. Breath slow. And in the silence, she whispered one word into the dark. Stay. The gravity held her a little tighter that night. And that was enough. The sea beneath him breathed like a creature asleep. Ori hovered in his diving rig at the edge of the reef wall, staring into the infinite blue that surrounded the research station on Solon Delta, an oceanic exoplanet so isolated, even light seemed reluctant to reach it. The water here didn't just move. It watched. He felt it in his bones, even through the gel suit that wrapped around his body like second skin. This planet was alive. And it was keeping secrets. Ori wasn't a soldier, or a spy, or a seeker of truth. He studied water. Its chemistry, its salinity, the delicate dance of its currents. But Solon Delta was no ordinary sea. It was deep beyond measure, pressure-dense past natural thresholds, and filled with sound patterns that weren't made by weather or whales. Someone had once called it the planet that listens. Ori believed it did more than that. He believed it remembered. On his 4th month alone in the tide base, he heard singing. Not over the comms. Not from the instruments. Inside the water. A melody so quiet it felt like an echo of breath through his ears. Not mechanical. Not recorded. It was a voice. Human, or close to it. Haunting. Steady. Cold. He followed it. The first time he saw her, she was swimming without a suit. Impossible. No one could survive this deep. The pressure alone would crush bones, compress lungs, turn human tissue into pulp. But she swam through it as though it were air. Moving with grace, slow and liquid. Her skin was pale silver, like moonlight caught in salt. Her hair floated like dark seaweed around her head. And her eyes, closed. Yet she never collided. Never flinched. Never strayed from the safest path through narrow coral ridges. She moved as though she saw with something else entirely. When he tried to follow, she vanished into the blue. Ori didn't report it. He knew what the council would say. Hallucination. Isolation trauma. Sensory echo. But he'd seen her. And more than that. He heard her. The melody returned. Soft. Sad. Slow. Like the sea weeping in a language only hearts understood. He started diving more. Extended his oxygen cycles. Reprogrammed the drones to scan wider. Somewhere between depth charts and thermal readings, he stopped looking for data. He was looking for her. The second time he saw her, she didn't run. She surfaced beside him like a dream rising from the deep, her body curving through the water as if time slowed just for her. He reached out instinctively. She caught his hand before he touched her. He flinched. Her skin was warm. Warm. Impossible. At this depth, she should have been colder than steel. But she smiled. And signed 3 slow gestures with her free hand. I see you. Then disappeared again. He returned to base. Didn't sleep. He wrote no notes. Filed no report. Just replayed the memory over and over. Her fingers. Her warmth. Her words. I see you. No one had said that to him in years. On the 9th dive, she was waiting. Just beyond the shelf, suspended mid-water, arms open slightly. Not threatening. Inviting. He swam closer. His HUD warned of oxygen limits. He disabled it. This wasn't science anymore. This was gravity. They spoke in gestures. She never surfaced. Never spoke aloud. Everything between them existed in movement and stillness. She showed him how to feel the current through fingertips. How to trace the heat of hydrothermal vents with his chest. How to predict shifts in pressure just by listening to the weight of silence. He asked her how she saw. She tapped her sternum. In here, she signed. Her name was a shape. Not a word. Not a sound. He couldn't pronounce it. But he called her Nea, the closest he could get. She never corrected him. One dive turned into 20. One moment into a ritual. They would meet near the reef wall, then drift together through the sub-canyons. Sometimes they swam for hours, saying nothing. Just existing. Other times, they spoke in complex sign sequences, their own hybrid of fluid linguistics and emotion. He told her about Earth. About sky and wind and the sound of leaves. She told him about lightless depths. About songs sung by the ocean before creatures ever walked land. He told her about loneliness. She didn't reply. She just pressed her forehead to his. And stayed. His body changed. He adjusted to depth. To quiet. To her. His dreams filled with blue. His muscles learned her rhythm. His heartbeat synced to the sea. He knew what was happening. He was falling in love. With something impossible. On the 23rd dive, she showed him her home. A hollow carved into the coral shelf, lit by glowing plankton. Smooth stones stacked like memories in the sand. She brushed a strand of hair from his mask and tapped her chest again. You feel now, she signed. He nodded. And you're afraid. He nodded again. She smiled. Good. She kissed him underwater. Their masks pressed briefly, then slid away. He should have panicked. Should have suffocated. Instead, he breathed. Not air. Not water. Just, her. Somehow, she passed breath into him. Not through lungs, but through intention. He didn't need to ask how. Some truths belonged only to pressure and trust. He stayed longer every day. The base sent warnings. He ignored them. NEA warned him once, you can't stay above and below. The sea demands a choice. He didn't answer. He wasn't ready. But the sea was patient. It waited. It whispered. And it offered. The final dive began like all the others. He found her waiting. Her hands already signing, you're late. He smiled. But something had changed. The current felt heavier. She was tense. They're coming, she signed. Your people. To take you back. I won't go, he said. She shook her head. They'll drag you. Then I'll return. She touched his chest, eyes sorrowful. No, you won't. Why? Because you'll forget the way. He grabbed her hands. Teach me. Now. Her expression cracked. And she did. They dove deeper than ever before. Past geothermal ridges. Past the shelf where light dared not follow. Into the trench where gravity curled inward. NEA showed him how to feel shape with his back. How to navigate silence by heartbeat. How to let go of light and trust the warmth. At the edge of the void, she turned to him. And kissed him again. This time, it wasn't oxygen she gave him. It was memory. Hers. The sea. Her people. The ending of their world. The choice she made to remain. And the hope she found in him. When the retrieval team arrived, they found Ori unconscious near the reef, barely breathing. No data. No logs. No proof. Just a small necklace he never wore before, woven from kelp, coral, and polished shell. He didn't speak for 2 days. Then he woke. He looked at them like they were strangers. He left the science division. Returned to Earth. Taught hydromapping to students who didn't care about shape or silence. But at night, he walked to the shore. And he listened. Sometimes, when the waves curled just right. He heard her singing. And he remembered the way